Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got the fabulous Carnivore JT with me, and I'm going to ask him the same question I ask absolutely everybody. Hey, why did you become carnivore?
Ooh, great question. I feel like I have a unique perspective because I'm one of the few people that did not become carnivore out of necessity. And what I mean by that is, the majority of people have like some type of autoimmune condition. It's a mental thing, it's a weight loss thing. And so why I legit started because I wanted to feel better. And I spent most of my 20s in really good shape between college athletics and bodybuilding and all that stuff. I was in really good shape in my 20s. 30s, got married, had a couple little kids, worked a whole bunch, started to get dad bod. And I finally decided, okay, I need to start losing some weight. And I probably had about 20 pounds to go. And I went back to my old tricks. And this was the eye-opening one for me is I did Whole30. I don't know if you're familiar with Whole30, but it's basically just you eat whole foods, right? No processed foods, no alcohol, no anything. Which seems like a pretty solid plan, right? I've used it before. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it for 90 days. And I lost weight. I didn't feel good. Like I felt terrible. And what I mean felt terrible is every time I would eat, I would bloat. I'd have some digestive discomfort. I'd feel sluggish. I'd have the energy roller coaster. And like, I was upset. I was like, this is dumb. Like, I just did this for 90 days, zero cheats. Anybody who's followed any of my stuff, you can watch some of my experiments. When I stick to a plan, when I have a plan in mind, like there's no variance for it. So, when I say no cheats, I mean, I no like picking a snack off the kid's plate, like nothing. And so then I was like, well, nope, I'm done. Stop the 90 days. I made the 90 days, finished the 90 days, and then just went right back to eating what I was. I was like, if I'm going to feel like terrible, I might as well eat the foods that I want. Gained all the weight right back. And then I finally had like an aha click where I was in Vegas. And I felt terrible the whole time. Anybody who's been to Vegas, it's very, rich food and it's, you're drinking and you're not sleeping enough. I was like, I got to fix something. And my wife sent me, she had sent me a couple, but she sent me Paul Saladino's profile again. It's like, hey, just check it out. Like, he's a little quirky, he's a little weird. This is before he went like completely in carnivore terms off the rocker. He was still carnivore MD. So I was like, I'll try it. From a physiological standpoint, I can get behind it and instantly felt better. Like within days, felt better. I was like, man, I can do this. Like you're telling me I can eat the fatty cuts of meat and I don't have to eat vegetables? Fantastic. And so I did a variant of animal based. I was still low carb. I was generally under 50 to 100 grams of carbs a day. But I kept fruit in my diet for the first little over a year. But I just felt better. Like I instantly felt better. And so I started moving more and I had better energy and inflammation went down and digestive stuff went down. And so then I was working out more and it was just this snowball. And all of a sudden, within a couple months, I'd lost 35 pounds. And I was like, man, I could do this. And then about November of this last year, I decided to go full carnivore. And the whole time I was resistant to it because I didn't think I needed to. I didn't. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if I can feel better. Even better than I feel right now. And the truly getting fat adaptation, that changed everything for me. Like, and for people who have never done that, I spent a lot of my life carrying Tupperware around, right? Like having to eat on a schedule, having to eat, at consistent times in order to maintain, level energy. And the moment I became fat adapted, like, it was life-changing to me because I no longer had to think about food. And the one story I use all the time is I was getting my sleeve done and, the artist was like, yeah, prepare for like 7 hours for our first session. And I was like, geez, like immediately, man, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? When am I going to eat it? How am I going to bring it? Am I going to have something how am I going to keep it cold? Then I was like, you know what? I don't have to worry about it. So I actually went to an appointment before that, went to my tattoo, came home 8-10 hours later and was totally. And, for anybody who's ever experienced that like crash and that low blood sugar, if you're doing that when you're in a tattoo chair, you're in for a bad time. Like that's, I'm worried about maybe passing out because this is just, you have this all adrenaline from the fact that you're being stabbed 1,000 times. And yeah, I was like, okay, I don't think I'm ever going to go back. And so I've done a couple of experiments where I varied off of it. I have some days where I'll eat, maybe a little bit of honey, not very often, but 99.9% of any carbs I get is going to come from dairy, a little bit of milk, raw milk that I'll drink, and any residual that's in like eggs and cheese. And here I am today.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, the fat adaptation is something that you've got to experience to understand it. And you're right, it is life-changing. I've been carnivore 5 years. Well, 5 years in 2 weeks' time on my 60th birthday, because I did it on my 55th. And I would say I didn't get to be fully fat adapted for maybe 2 years. I thought I was doing really well. And you're right, you can have these moments where just suddenly you just feel different. And even now, 3 years later, I was talking to my wife about half an hour ago and saying, wow, do you remember when I was on the high carb thing, before my 50s? I couldn't have done today. Today, I've not eaten. I couldn't, and then it's now, 8 o'clock in the evening. I could not have done that. I said, I've got this interview to do, but, I'm fine. I don't need to do anything. Sod's law, I'll faint now, I've said that. But, it's really interesting. So what do you do for a living then? So you were having tattoos. What do you do? I can see the savage there. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment.
At the moment, so we up and moved from essentially the northern part of the country. I'm in the U.S., the state of Washington to Arizona, which is essentially moving across the country. It's about 1,600 miles. And part of that move was I decided to quit my job. And so basically I'm a stay-at-home dad. And I've had, ventures and like remote sales gigs on the side. And then I got into this and I was like, I'm just going to, fully commit to it. So I kind of have a lot going right now. I have the Carnivore JT thing. Social media is kind of blown up a little bit there. I do a line of merchandise, print my own t-shirts. Savage Carnivore Company is more physical products. So I have a line of chef's knives that I have with that. And I've also just launched a coaching program. My background is in personal training. My bachelor's is in sports medicine. And then post that, I was a Division I baseball coach, in addition to experience in strength conditioning. And then I had a few sales gigs and I was like, man, this is lame. So then I went into personal training and actually serviced 10,000 in-person sessions as a personal trainer. And then I was also a manager that hired, trained, and developed. And I did that for a number of years. And in person, it just got way too hectic. I mean, you're doing 40, 50 hours a week of just nonstop people. And so I went off that into, kind of a different sales environment. But I've had so many people ask me if I'm doing some type of coaching, nutrition coaching. So I am probably by the time this airs, it will have launched Savage Carnivore Fitness. So that's another thing that I will be undertaking as an online coaching as well. So yeah, kind of got a lot of stuff in the works. When I first started this, I was like, yeah, I'll just, start an account and post some things about carnivore and rah. And then it just kind of snowballed to where we are today.
And it does, doesn't it? Because it's so effective. I mean, I was smiling there because our backgrounds sound quite similar. I have an honours degree in physiology and health sciences. I'm an advanced personal trainer in Britain, and I was a semi-pro soccer player and won a tennis tournament. So we've both come to this in a different way. You said yours was not out of necessity. Mine absolutely was. Before the age of 50, I had lower left quadrant pain, coronary artery calcium scan of 639, pre-diabetic. I'd never drunk any alcohol, didn't smoke, and I was running 10 miles at least 3 times a week and very active. So I should have been the poster boy for grains and skim milk and fruit and all that sort of stuff. And I absolutely was. not. So I think it's really interesting when you find carnivore. I mean, I went through the journey of low carb, keto, and then carnivore, and how good it is. And then you just realise that you've been training people wrong. That's why I realised training goes back when I was high carb, and I was having what I called sort of great success. I now realise was not, because those people might lose a bit of weight, might look a bit better, but it was hard. They was always hungry. That they wanted to go back to how they used to eat. And I find training people on carnivore, I don't get any of that. They lose more weight, they look better, they're stronger, they never talk about food. What has been your experience with training maybe the old way and with carnivore? Have you seen any differences?
Yeah, so that's a big reason for doing it as well. Is I was everybody who follows any of my stuff, I've started this alter ego on my page. It's called Seco Bro TJ. Seco being calories in, calories out. And the reason I try to spend so much time talking about calories is because that was me, right? Like I was an amateur bodybuilder. I personal trained. I was the guy who you're like, let's calculate a calorie deficit. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Your maintenance is 3,000. We're going to put you on 2,500. It's 500 a day. You're going to lose a pound a week. We're going to go, over the course of 6 weeks, we're going to do this. We're probably going to build a little muscle. And, that was me. Like that was, and I had very good success with it personally. And so like all of these other online trainers, because I had such good success, because I could manipulate my weight so well, it had to work for everybody, right? It's science. And when I started carnivore, so it honestly, like, this is a kind of a recent change. That's kind of the thing about Twitter, right? Unless you go through and delete all your tweets, all of your stuff is there in the universe forever. If you go back 8 months, a year, you'll find me talking about, oh yeah, I'll absolutely get fat on carnivore if I eat too much. That's a surplus. And it honestly wasn't until I did my 4K carnivore experiment where I was like, you know what, I'm going to literally stuff myself every single day to see what happens. And 4,000 is definitely above my maintenance. I'm not super active. Most of my time is spent at home. My gym is at home. I don't walk around my gym. I don't do cardio. I hate it with a passion. I lift heavy. I take decent rest breaks. I don't do HIIT. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And I work out about 4 days a week. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this TDE calculator. I'm going to eat way above it and see what happens. And I lost weight. And for anybody who's like, oh, it's just water weight. Yeah, I had some some cheat days prior, but I've been carnivore for a long time. I washed out all my water the 3 days prior when I lost 4 pounds before I even started. And then I had these fluctuations the first week, and then these just steady declines over the last couple of weeks. And that really changed my perception. I was starting to get to the point where it's like, man, calories are not the same. Like there's something different going on. And then I did that and I was literally shocked. I expected to gain some weight, but to lose weight, I was like, what is happening right now? Like I am literally stuffing myself. And so I had some blood work done, and it reaffirmed to me one of the driving forces of obesity, and that's controlling your insulin levels. I'm very insulin sensitive. I don't know what the conversion is in the US, but or in the UK, the US metric for it was 1.6, my insulin, which actually flags as low. If you Google that, everybody will tell you that you're diabetic because you have to have high blood sugar at that. I'm like, no, my blood sugar was 79, which again, I don't know what the conversion is, but like extremely good blood sugar and very low insulin. And I ran it by a couple doctors because at first I was like, I can't find anything on this. Like I literally cannot find anything that says if you have below normal insulin but good blood sugar, this is what it means. And there's a type 1 diabetic naturopathic doctor that I talked to quite a bit on Twitter, Dr. Ryan Attar. And I sent him, I was like, hey man, what does this mean? He goes, yeah, dude, you're super insulin sensitive. Like that's good. And I was like, oh, okay, that might explain it then. And it further reinforced it when I went on the 4,000 calories of standard American diet and gained only 5 pounds. And my insulin barely went up. Like it went up from 1.6 to 2.1. So I was like, man, like if I can control my insulin now, obviously before anybody like thinks that I'm promoting that we eat this way and that if you overeat, you'll never get fat. My point of the whole experiment is if I can control my insulin, control my hormones, it's going to be really hard for me to put on fat, really hard. And, the blood tests and my current levels definitely confirmed that. And so as I got in, I'm like, man, we gotta stop this current model of obesity, because the current model of obesity, the energy balance model is simply, hey, you move too little and you eat too much. And that's why everybody's fat. Like, it can't be that simple. Like, if it was that simple, we've been preaching that since the 50s, right? Since, I don't know his name, the scientist dropped a pound of fat in a bomb calorimeter and said a pound of fat has 3,500 calories. It's calories in, calories out has been, around for years. And we've had this meteoric rise to obesity. I'm like, so it's got to be something different. And, that just kind of reaffirmed why more information needs to get out there, because you have all these people who are restricting their calories to crazy levels, like 1,500, 1,200 calories and not getting results. And if they go online, trainers will be like, well, you're lying. You're not tracking right. It's impossible for you to eat that few calories and not lose weight. And then they'll be like, oh, just look at the Twinkie diet. Were there any fat kids in Auschwitz? Like, all of this stuff. And you're like, come on, like, it's not as simple as this. And I know that went off on a little bit of a tangent, but from a personal standpoint, also eating low carb compared to normal, I have no dips in energy or performance whatsoever. The biggest difference being I do not have to time my meals. And it just goes back to that fat adaptation. When I was prior, I would literally eat as I was walking onto the gym floor. Like, I worked at the gym, so it helps, but I would literally be like, eat, dish the Tupperware, go. Because if too long of a time passed in between me eating and me starting my workout, it was shot. Like, I might as well just stop, because nothing I do is going to get me back to the energy level that I need. And so that's the biggest thing. If it's, 11 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and I haven't eaten yet, but I want to work out, I can do it. I can eat fasted. I can eat, fed. It doesn't matter. And so, the only thing I will give anybody who says anything about needing carbs, the pump's a little bit better. Right? Like, yeah. I still get a pump. I still feel full. I still look full. I still have good strength. I might even have better strength, to be honest, because I don't have these periods where I feel gassed out from not having carbs. Literally everything is on par, if not better, except for the pump, which is like just a little bit. I can tell just a little bit. When I was eating 500 grams of carbs, I was like, okay, like the pump's feeling good. I feel like I would gas out, right? Like the pump would get so like, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I just gotta stop now. But other than the pump, nothing. Like, not one single thing do I miss about being on carbs while training.
Yeah, great. That's really good. I mean, I agree with you about the disproving calories. One of the things that I also qualified in is obesity and diabetes, and type 1 diabetics prove it's not about calories. Because before 1922, before we discovered insulin, a type 1 diabetic could eat 10,000 calories and still waste away. So that pretty much proves that for those is hormones. And then you've only got to extrapolate that to people like yourself, for instance, eating 4,000 calories and losing weight, or like you say, people on 1,200 calories who are still not losing weight, when the people that I call the CICO people psychos, actually, because that's how it spells out. And the other thing is, I mean, on my diabetic side, I can get a type 2 diabetic that doesn't believe in all this, and I'll say even the activity will prove it to you, because you translocate receptors to your membrane while you're exercising, so you'll be a little bit more insulin sensitive. Once you get a little bit more insulin sensitive, things will improve, even if you don't change anything else. But I do want you to change your diet. And my Guyton's medical textbook categorically says, if there's high levels of insulin, you're not going to fat burn. I mean, it is that simple. But sadly, people want to push calories. And it's not about calories. It's certainly about the type of food you eat and the type of person you are. You're low insulin. This is my book, by the way. If you don't know me very well, my guide to blood tests in the context of keto or carnivore, and talks about exactly what you just said. Because the other thing I've done is many years, over a decade of being a phlebotomist and offering private blood tests. So I've seen it, and I've seen the difference in low carb, keto, and carnivore, and you have to explain the differences to people. But I mean, I love your stuff. I mean, the 4K thing is just amazing. I really think it's great. Now, don't want to be an echo chamber. So what about your friends and family? What did they think when you said you're going to do carnivore?
It was kind of par for the course for me, right? So having done bodybuilding, I was always the weird one. I was always the one that brought my own meals, or if I was on prep, I wouldn't eat at the restaurant, or so they honestly were like, meh, whatever. But as I've had experience with it, as I've had positive results, you inevitably get everybody who's like, man, what are you doing? Like, or they'll be like, man, I heard about this carnivore, or I'll have like real life friends who were like, yeah, so I started carnivore. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, I've been following around. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't even know. Like, cause you get to the point where eventually you stop seeing each individual notification and you don't know who follows you. And then you find out that all these people that you know in real life follow you and start carnivore. And so I haven't had any family members go strict. So my wife, for example, is not strict carnivore, but she does, prioritize animal protein and is pretty low on the carbs. She'll still do like rice and fruit and that kind of stuff. She's hesitant to give it up completely. I'm still working on her a little bit, but as far as what the family thinks, this is like nothing new. And I actually haven't had any. I've heard people who have been like had family push back against it or have like a negative response. I haven't had that at all. It's all been positive, and most of my family has at least tried to incorporate some of the strategies.
Yeah, I think possibly because you have been fit. I would imagine they see you as an example and therefore have that mindset of, well, he knows what he's doing. And also, you've gone carnivore and it seems like it's improved everything. Yeah, I agree with you about the pump. And obviously, the pump from carbs comes from that water retention mainly. But what about then broader? Because you said real life friends and family. What about the broader society? When you'll get somebody say, for instance, what about all those vitamins and minerals you're now missing out on? What do you say to those people?
I love those. So it's always the people who they will take the couple carnivores who attack vegans, right? This is how it all goes full circle. A couple carnivores will attack vegans and be like, why would you go vegan? You can't get X, Y, and Z, right? Where are you going to get these essential vitamins and minerals from? And the knock on veganism is you have to supplement. Now, there's a couple of vegans out there who will be like, I've never supplemented in my life. Okay. But as a general rule, most vegans have to supplement. It is a necessity. And so then they'll take that back on carnivore. Well, you're anti-supplement, so where do you get all this? You can't supplement ever. I'm like, okay, well, if you're worried about it, just supplement. That's the point of supplements, is to supplement your diet. Now, do you need to? No. And then people lose their mind, right? The first one is people need to understand how your RDA, your recommended daily allowance, changes when you remove all of this bad food. Like the moment you remove all this bad food, the moment you start reducing this glucose, this carbohydrate intake, your RDA changes completely. And that's a really hard concept for people. The easiest one is vitamin C. I'm going to butcher the name. It's the glucose ascorbic pathway, I believe it is. And basically, it's some old, they found this out years ago. This is not something new. Glucose and vitamin C compete for the same receptors. And so the more glucose you have in your blood, the more glucose you are intaking, the harder it's going to be for vitamin C to dock with receptors. So you need more of it. Remove the glucose, and now all of your vitamin C gets uptake. And the amount that's found in meat, which is, there is meat there. People will Google it, be like, there's not. I'm like, no, that's because the USDA doesn't test for it. Just because they don't test for it does not mean it's not there. And, even more so if you do, different meats, not just ruminants or liver, something like that, that has enough that your body needs, right? You don't need the RDA. You really only need traces amounts, like single digit milligrams a day to avoid scurvy. And that's the scurvy. Well, but all of these sailors back in the 1800s got scurvy because they didn't have fruit. Like, no, they ate a bunch of processed foods, some old moldy bread, and super salted, outdated beef, and got scurvy. Like, a little bit different. And then they'll bring up other ones, and I'm like, you know what? I couldn't tell you, right? I can't go inside and tell you the cellular mechanism of why I do not need to take the RDA of magnesium or of potassium. But guess what? All of my levels are great. I feel great. And you know what? You should probably do an electrolyte supplement anyway, no matter your diet, because it's going to help, especially if you're working out. So don't freak out about it. You don't need to do any of it. If you're worried about it, take an electrolyte. If you are super worried about vitamin C, take a vitamin C. I don't care. Like, it's not a big deal. But at the end of the day, there's still supplements to the diet. They aren't required because you absolutely can get everything you need from eating meat and animal products.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I say with the bloods. The normative ranges are not optimal ranges, and they're not in the context of this way of eating. They're, all those blood results are from people eating about 60% carbohydrates. So always remember those ranges are not saying they're optimal. That's the same with the recommended daily allowance. It's all been worked out on somebody eating 60% carbohydrates. So it's not contextual at all. And you do get some nuance in bloods. For instance, they'll say if you're African descent, your GFR reading needs to be different. So they acknowledge that there is difference between people. But I don't actually go by the RDA ever. I never have actually. I've always gone by how I look and feel. And I think, I just think it's a work of fiction, really. I really genuinely do. And the thing about the vitamin C is absolutely true. I have done this now, carnivore coaching for 5 years. I've yet to have anyone have scurvy, no symptoms of scurvy, no bleeding gums, no problems like that. But anyway, I just wanted to ask what your views were on that as well. So what are you currently doing at the moment? Do you do like an OMAD, 2MAD? What do you do?
I very much eat when I'm hungry and eat till I'm full. And it's, people might call it intuitive eating. That's the thing about carnivore, right? Like, I don't plan anything. If I have a super busy day and I'm only going to be home for a short amount of time, sure, I'll plan a meal. But if I'm home for the whole day, it's funny you brought up not eating yet. I did the same thing, right? I had an appointment. I came back. I was a little late. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait to eat till after. And I do that all the time, where it's, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm, debating, do I force myself to eat real fast now, or do I just wait till after? Well, I'll just wait till after. It doesn't matter to me. So some days if I'm hungry, I'll eat at 9 o'clock in the morning. Today, my first meal will probably be 1:30 in the afternoon. It's just how I feel. And I have yet to have any problems, because my body will tell me if I need to eat more, right? If I go a couple days where I realize, man, I really haven't ate that much the last couple days, my body's straight up going to tell me, be like, bro, you need to eat, like, eat more. I'm like, okay, like, I'll eat more today. I have this super weird craving, and it's not a craving like you would think, like, oh my gosh, I need some chocolate. But I have a specific, and ribeye is the only thing that can solve this. And it's got to be the fat content with it. But my body, like, I will have this like feeling that I need to eat. I'm not hungry. I don't have low blood sugar. I'm like, man, I need something. And literally ribeye is the only thing that's going to solve it. And then I eat that. I'm like, okay, good. That was it. And that doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while. And my body just tells me when I need to eat. And so I end up falling into a 2MAD usually, where I'll eat twice a day. And typically it's some form of intermittent fasting, just because I usually don't eat until 11, 12 o'clock.
Oh, and do you factor in when you've eaten to when you train? Do you ever think, right, I've just eaten intuitively, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, I've got to wait 2 hours? Or do you just train when you can fit it in? How do you do that?
I usually just train when I fit it in. Generally, I will either work out like 10 o'clock in the morning or like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's usually not an in between. If I'm working out at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have no problem just not eating before. If I'm working out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I try to eat, 2 hours before, just because it can be a little heavy if I'm, going through a full workout. I just ate a pound of ribeye, 10 minutes before, but I have and I've, it's not the most comfortable, but I still feel fine. And so I try to plan it out a little bit, but if it happens, that I mess up my schedule and I don't give myself enough time, it's not a big deal. That's the beauty of it. Unlike when I was eating a decent amount of carbs, if I messed up my schedule, it was game over. It was like, I got to go pound every single piece of food I can find and then sit there for 30 minutes and hope I don't, do this, because I blew through all of the fuel that I had. I waited too long to, work out after I eat it, and now my workout's ruined.
Cool. So what is your client base then? Do you tend to deal with people that are training? Is that what you attract, people that want to train and want to be carnivore?
The majority that I attract are just trying to figure out why what they're doing now doesn't work. Right. I have found that when you first start as a trainer, you think you're going to attract the people that want to look like you, and you do a little bit. But the better you look and the more in shape you are, typically the more in shape and better the other people are. And so they're looking for nuggets of information. They're like, I feel good. I'm doing good. I just need a little bit. It's usually the people who are like, I'm at my wit's end, right? I don't know what to do. I'm hearing 8,000 different things. They've usually worked with a trainer before, right? And it's just like you said, I lost 10 pounds in the first, 6 weeks, but I didn't feel good. I was hungry all the time. I had cravings all the time. I started getting knee pain. I started getting back pain. I had some digestive issues. I wasn't sleeping well. And it's the typical, you can lose weight if you restrict enough. That's just the natural law of life. That doesn't mean calories in, calories out is the gold standard. That just means if you don't eat, you will die. And you usually die because you're malnourished, and as you get malnourished, you lose weight. And so it's those people who are like, when I was paying somebody to tell me what to do, and I had this financial motivation, like, I'm paying it, I might as well do it, they were able to get success. But the moment that financial motivation goes away and they don't have somebody babysitting them through every single step, they get it right back. And it's not a binge eating or the wrong diet or all of this stuff. It's because you were trying to rely on severe restriction, which is not, as soon as you remove the restriction, you remove all of the results. And so the majority of people that come to me and then I try and help, it's getting them to change their perspective on food. And yes, there's some inherent tracking that needs to happen in the beginning, just so you know, right? If you don't know that you're eating 800 calories a day, you should probably know that. If you don't know that you're eating, 6 liters of butter a day, you should probably know that. But it's this ability to tap into just listening to your body and eating when you're hungry and eating till you're full, and viewing food as what's the famous line? I think it was Chafee. Food's either healing you or it's hurting you.
Absolutely.
At some point, you have to grow up and realize that. And no, I'm not the guy who's like, yeah, I'm going to help you work in chocolate into your diet. No, if you want to do that, go pay an online trainer, however much money a month, and they will help you do that. I don't think that's beneficial for anybody. Now, am I saying that you can never have chocolate ever again? No. But once you fix what's going on, you don't want it. And the couple times you do, you're like, man, I really want this. And then you eat it and you're like, it's like when you drink in your 40s or your 30s, right? And you're like, man, I love drinking. It's so much fun. And then you wake up with a hangover and you're like, why did I do this? I didn't used to get that. I used to have hangovers in my 20s. Man, I don't want to drink anymore because hangovers suck. And that's how you start to view it. And then you can make adult decisions. You're like, do I want to deal with the consequences of eating this or do I not? Most of the time, no, I don't.
Yeah, and you mentioned little nuggets there, and I wrote down what you said. Change their perspective on food, and I mean that's the key. You look at food differently. I think that's the biggest thing with carnivore. Yes, it is for nutrition, and yes, you need a certain amount of amino acids and fats, but in the end, it's how you look at food and why you're eating it. I think. I mean, I would say when I started my low carb journey, and I was trying to be good, I realised when I went to the movies was the only time in my life I ever fancied a hot dog and a Coke. So it wasn't the food. It was the environment. It was a situation. My brain was just saying, this is what you do. And the moment I realised that I was doing stuff because I was programmed, I don't want to get all tinfoil hat, but you know what I mean? I was brainwashed, basically. You then realise, wow, I'm doing stuff because that's the thing you do, not the thing that's good for you. And it's all based on that sort of thing. So now if I go to the movies, the movies are pretty rubbish nowadays. But anyway, if I do, then I would just take up some fried bacon, chop it up, just put it in a little bag. But also, I've realised I don't even need to eat. Why am I even eating? Just because I'm sitting somewhere for 2 hours, I don't really need to do that. I just enjoy the movie. So I think that's it. They're constantly changing perspectives as people... Their brain seems to open up more as well. There's more clarity in this way of eating. So I think I'm with you on that 100%, actually. Right. I've asked everything I wanted to ask. Well, actually, I want to ask tons more, but I do my videos are about 35 minutes. So we've got there. I know you mentioned Paul Saladino before he jumped the shark, and you snuck in there about Anthony Chaffee. So it's good that I'm putting you out there as one of the influencers that's worth looking at. So we'll put your descriptions, in the your links in the description down below. And if you want to finish with anything you want to say to attract new people to your site or your Instagram, what would they expect?
Ooh, that's a good one. This is not a knock on anybody who posts about carnivore. The majority of carnivore influencers you see will be like, "Hey, this is what I eat. These are the benefits. This is awesome," right? Like, it's very positive, and that's great. That's not exactly what my content is. The majority of my content is either cooking reels. I have a cookbook. I do a lot of recipes, reels. The rest of it is just trying to help people understand the arguments that you're going to hear and how to combat them. And so the majority of what I do is, reactions to videos of either people quoting studies, which I'll try to break down, or people, trying to point out what they consider misinformation, which actually isn't. And so that's a lot. I realize that people get these questions all the time. Like, what about the vitamins and minerals? What about, heart disease? What about fiber? What about all of these things? And the more like little bits of information, they don't have to be experts. But if you can combat somebody who's like, you have to eat fiber, and you're like, well, actually, once you remove carbohydrates, once you remove the, the toxic food that your body doesn't break down, you actually don't need fiber, because 99% of what fiber does is either helps move your bowels through, or it helps with your gut microbiome. And guess what? Every single thing that's related to my gut microbiome is better without fiber. Oh, and by the way, my digestion is too. So why would I need fiber? Because all fiber studies are done based on people who eat, your standard diet. And so just stuff like that. That's the majority of my content. I am a little sarcastic at times. So it is not like positive, upbeat. I very much have that personality, and that's what it is. It's not for everybody, but I am trying to give people a different perspective on carnivore.
Right. Well, hopefully more people go and have a look at that. I don't normally end, but I want to just add something that I get that with the fiber all the time. And if they ever send a study, I always read the study, and 100% of the time I say the same thing. Thanks for the study, buddy, but can you send me one where there's a no fiber group? Because they don't ever do that. They never have a no fiber group. And So it doesn't say anything, does it, about having no fibre, because they've not studied that. And they'll always come back, well, yeah, but the more fibre, the better they were. I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I can see that they've got those figures, but until you put a no fibre group in there, we can't make any assumptions. But I've got this huge, over 1,000 client base, and they all have no fibre, and they've all resolved IBS. They don't have any toilet issues whatsoever. So I look forward to getting a few people over to your channel and on your IG. It'd be great. But thanks ever so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me. And if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.